Okay, so we're kind of doing the preliminary to a May 10, May 11 Mother's Day meeting call, and we haven't really started yet. But Richard, you were sharing about your Trimtam meeting and this new concept, this new presentation of synergetics ideas. So do you want to kind of start over and then we can engage in a conversation about it while we're waiting for others to join us?
Yeah, I was starting to talk about the fact that one of the members of the TrimTab group has decided that because we've decided that we wanted to tackle synergetics, and and then he proposed the idea that that he could post different sort of sections of synergetics every week, and that out of the weekly presentations, we might pick something out of it during the every 2 week time that we actually meet. So he started doing that, and then he was also taping himself and posting it on YouTube, his own explanation of some of the language and perhaps the difficult ones to understand. And so one of the readings in the last week or so has been on the 400 section that refers to Fuller explaining or using the tetherball as an illustration of our connection to universe. And that he talked about the pole that the tetherball gets hooked onto, and the rope, if you want, that is attached to the ball, and then the players, of course, for those of us who know about the tetherball, the players are in a competition, and the goal is to see if you can wrap the cord around the upright pole the first, and one would be trying to do it counterclockwise and the other one clockwise.
This was my favorite game in elementary school.
Yeah,
I used to get knots on my fist because I'd hit the top of the ball. This was my favorite game. Go ahead.
And so anyway, he went on to explain that, or at least Fuller explained that the rope that attaches to the ball and to the top of the pole is equivalent to one's attachment to universe, and that he described it as a one restraint phenomena that allows you all kinds of movement. You can go around, you can go back and forth, but you can't get detached from universe, which he then used to explain this concept of self and otherness, and saying that universe in that sense is kind of the ultimate otherness, and in order for that to be aware of, there has to be something has to be aware of the universe, and that something really has to be self. And one of the things that I've read before is that the importance of self and otherness is that in order to have a self, there has to be awareness. In order for awareness, there has to be otherness. And the reverse of that process is if there's no otherness, there's no awareness, no self. And I've always liked that as a way of capturing the importance of the two, self and otherness. But the tetherball illustration really helped me more fully understand that. And then it hit me after we were talking about it that supposedly Fuller, when he was contemplating walking out into Lake Michigan and taking his life that way, just doing something that he loved to do, which was swimming, and he was just going to go out and allow himself to become exhausted to the point that he just let go. But the epiphany he apparently had, according to him anyway, was that in pausing and thinking about what he was going to do, he realized that he belonged to universe. He didn't belong to himself. And so he had no right in his own mind, he had no right to take himself out of universe, I think is what he was trying to get at. And it was almost like if universe wanted me out, then universe would see to it that happened at some point. But it was out of his control as to when that would be. And so for some reason, the tetherball illustration connected me to that thinking. And the other reason it, I think, came to my mind, because when the trim tab initiator, the reader, he wanted to, he figured out if he read something every day for 2 years, we would get through synergetics, and we'd get through it sometime in November of 2027. And as he calculated that we would be very close to the day that Fuller was on the shores of Lake Michigan. So that's why he sort of calculated this projection reading time to coincide with that November 2027 date, 100 years. The 100th year anniversary of Fuller's turning the corner and deciding to do something different. So yeah, it's really quite fascinating. So today I was saying in the course of this tetherball example, Fuller then uses the ball to represent me. In other words, to represent a person. And then when he configures 2 restraints, 3 restraints, and 4 restraints, he then has the ball inside the tetrahedron, and it's now kind of stabilized, but still has got movement possibilities. And so what was happening to me is that I've always thought of the person as one of the 4 nodes of the tetrahedron, and then I attached other nodes to it or named them. And that my understanding of the inside ball, what he was calling the me ball, I understood that as something that was more like the soul. It was more like the essence of who you are. And all of these all the 4 nodes kind of feed into that. And that's one of our big struggles is coming up with that inner essence of who we are as people or human beings. So I thought, well, if I'm interpreting this illustration correctly, then the me should be in the middle, and there should be 4 other nodes connected into that me. And so we got into quite a lot of discussion, and for the most part, people were starting to say that inside is really not a kind of like a physical me. It's more like a contemplative, a metaphysical maybe kind of me. And it started to reconnect my idea to it being part of the soul, the inner being, the inner core of who you are, which is in part defined by yourself and what you kind of believe in. And it's also defined by those around you, whether it's your larger society that says that you're the kind of person that we want to either include in universe or we want to get rid of, which is kind of symbolic of countries warring with each other or belief
Relatives,
systems.
my in-laws.
Yeah, or people. You know, I use the example of the the institution, a current institution that has decided that if you're a certain kind of gender, you're not eligible to be in this organization.
Right.
And so you either, you know, voluntarily take yourself out or you'll get thrown out. And the same applies to the immigrant people, I guess. It's the same thing that if you're not here on some kind of legitimate basis, then we have the right to exclude you or separate you and that kind of thing. Um, and so, yeah, it was a really interesting kind of discussion. Um, and a lot of people got into it. And,
Cool.
so that's kind of the essence of what we were talking about. And, 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 and it's just like what we're doing with reading um,
Amy.
Amy's book or other readings, that when you have people reading and discussing, you get a lot more out of it than if it was just you reading by yourself.
You bet. Now, I was excited to record this because, keeping in mind, I heard a really cool short YouTube short the other day that talks about how there are these stars up there, and that this guy has gone around and documented 88 different perspectives on star constellations. Like I've mentioned this briefly in another call, the man on the moon, for example, the rabbit in the moon, the buffalo in the moon. It depends on your culture. It depends on what an individual sees, and it depends on how much they're willing to surrender to their cultural uh, aspect. I mean, I may naturally see a rabbit in the moon, but if everybody calls it a buffalo, I'm probably just going to surrender and forget about that I saw a rabbit when I first saw it. Probably, because I'm going to surrender to my culture. But his point was that he's identified 88 different ways to interpret the constellations. But it doesn't matter what pattern you discern, which one of those 88 patterns you discern, because they'll all get you to the North Pole. You just have a different way to get there. And you and I can argue that's the Big Dipper. No, that's not the Big Dipper. That's Ursa Major. No, that's not Ursa Major. That's the dragon from someplace. But as long as we forget the argument and just use the stars and go, we're fine. We'll all get there.
Yeah,
But we get these big arguments about being right about what pattern we're seeing. So, with that regard, I saw some different things in your tetherball analogy. So I'll just relate to you what came up for me. What I saw the pole and the rope on the ball and the ball. I saw that as the vector equilibrium. In other words, that's the universe and that's the energy playing in any direction. The actual nodes are the two players who you can't, they don't show up with the pole and the rope and the ball. They're extraneous from it, and yet they're inside of it, and they hit that ball. And when they hit that ball spins around, and now we have an interrelationship. And if I'm lucky enough, I hit it high enough so you can't get to it. And then I just keep it up there and I win. No,
mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to. But then I hit the ball, then you hit the ball, and suddenly there we have our interactions. Even though we each of us are at 90 degrees to the pole,
Right.
our interrelationship is curved and based on where we are in our semicircle when we hit that ball. And if I hit it and it goes up over your head, so I saw the nodes are actually the players who aren't really part of the vector equilibrium. They're just participants. And when you talked about how maybe I'm inside the tetrahedron and there are these four windows or faces to the universe, and maybe there's a spiritual me-ness inside that tetrahedron looking out.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer the octahedron, which is implied from the double tetrahedron. I like the octahedron inside there with 8 faces coming out. Then I have up and down and north, south, east, and west. I have 6. I have 8 windows instead of 4 windows. And I'm in the center of that as my spiritual essence. And now I can use I have the octahedron, which is the Kabbalic or the Native American, the Norse mythology. They all use an octahedron in their picture of the universe. So I agree with you. Somehow my spiritual essence, my awareness is somehow inside of that polyhedron, whether it's a tetrahedron or an octahedron, doesn't matter. And I'm looking out through those faces at the universe. So I like that. I like that. But I really saw the players at 90 degrees to the pole interrelating by smacking the ball and giving it energy, and the ball curving around are the edges to whatever's happening between these two nodes. Anyway, I just thought that was really cool. And I saw the pole, the ropes, and the ball as the vector equilibrium, and it's constantly in motion, depending on what's going on. And it is the cube octahedron. It's the jitterbug. Anyway, those are notes that I got from there. So
well, it also goes further, I think, in terms of bringing the octahedron in there, because the other thing that they were talking about is that he used the analogy of tying your connection to universe to your wrists, your left wrist and right wrist, and then he played it out to say what that kind of tension and force could feel like you pull your arms out of your sockets. So he changed and said you tie the rope, if you want, to your waist. And you would get 2 restraints, and then he went on to explain about 3 and 4, and then how that would kind of hold you in that fairly stable middle. But then there was a further discussion that said, if you have a square, the square is unstable and it has a lot more kind of flexibility in terms of maneuvering. And all of a sudden that helped me understand the positive side of the unstable square, because it's got more maneuverability, if you want. And so when you now talk about the octahedron being your preferred sort of model, then I can see the square in there, and you can then see the shifting and the dynamics of how should you give yourself into somebody's version of what they're seeing, or should you hold to your own position and persuade them to go your way? But if you accept what your conclusion was, it doesn't really matter which one you abide by. They're both going to get you to the same destination.
Exactly.
The same
We
place.
can have a war about it if we want to have a war. It's a waste of time. You use
Yeah,
your paradigm, I'll use my paradigm, and we'll double check each other as we're walking away,
right.
walking towards our goal. Yeah, beautiful. Good morning, Manu.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, you made a note about the square in the octahedron is locked in, a loss of flexibility. I think I agree with you on that point. We haven't started our meeting yet exactly. Anne is not going to be here because it's Mother's Day and she's with her family. So it's just us chickens. I haven't heard from Joe yet. I sent him a thing, but I haven't heard from him.
Finally received.
Aha, you got Anne's book.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
It was lost in the post. You know, the post office, African post office doesn't work anymore. Nobody, they are almost bankrupt, and nobody wants post office anyway. Everybody goes digital. And the private courier will deliver whatever message to your home.
Yeah.
Whatever parcel. We don't need, I mean, the post office is there, they are very struggling. So the book arrived here, but they never notified me. So it's until Anne sent me on Friday the tracking number.
Mm.
And I look for the closest post office, which is about 2 miles from here. And it was there.
Cool. So you used the tracking number, found out where its last position was, and went to it rather than it coming to you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very concerned because the postal system in America is under a lot of stress too.
No, it has
And
to disappear. It has to disappear. You don't need it. Need it for what?
you don't need it if you're digital. But if you're
No,
in
no,
the
no.
middle,
They are private. They are private courier that are quite effective.
not in South Dakota, my friend.
Okay, but here,
Nobody's going to South Dakota.
okay, yes, okay, they're relevant for very, very remote here too. Pensioners in very remote areas.
Yeah,
They get, they'll go to the post office to get their pension, right?
sure.
Yes, but surely in a large town, it is there's a lot of competition.
Well, I really think that the postal, call me an old fogey, but I think the postal system is something that should be uh, funded by the government for absolute democratic connection with everything, and no deadline should be set that moves slower than the post.
But
But
here is unions. Is union who kill it? You have a lot of kind of self-interest. Unions, postal self workers union is very powerful in there.
the
It was
the
very
United States postal workers have a union. I'm pretty sure of it, and they're not able to go up against the budget cutters, I think. I'm going to step away to see if on my phone, see if Joe came back. Say hello to, then we'll decide if we're going to start this meeting or not. So, yeah. So I'll be right back.
Richard, you were saying some good things, and I just heard you about the octahedron and the square. So what's up? What was it about? Where were you? Where did you get that experience?
Oh, one of the Trim Tab members in our every 2-week meeting agreed or offered 2 weeks ago to post a section from Synergetics every day, 3 or 4 of the sections. And then when we would meet every 2 weeks, people could pick one or more of those sections and either get clarification or speak to it or address it. And so today when we were meeting, I was addressing the section in Synergetics that uses the tetherball illustration to explain how we're connected to universe in a one restraint type of dimension, and then Fuller illustrated a little bit more about what happens when you have 2 restraints and then eventually 3 and then 4. But my struggle as I was reading his description of the tetherball and then using a ping pong ball as another metaphor, and then he used himself, me, a person, as equivalent to the tetherball or the ping pong ball, and has it located in the middle of the tetrahedron with all these restraints.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to think, have I made a mistake in thinking that the person concept, I could put in one of the 4 nodes and then connect the 2 other nodes, such as your belief system or your familial system or your larger institution system, and you would have a tetrahedral sort of system, and the 6 interrelationships, if they were in harmony with the validators, then the culture or the nation or the people would get along with each other. But if one of the validators was in conflict, such as a validator that the government has or an institution has that you have to be of a certain kind in order to belong to our organization, then that puts a strain on the relationship between the person and that organization. And they either have to bow to the dominant validator system, or they have to fight it, or they have to get crushed by it, or they have to be exterminated, or but it makes the whole system unstable and in conflict, not in harmony. And so I was thinking that, well, was I wrong in putting the person in one of the four nodes, and I should be putting the person in the middle, and then connect them out to four nodes. Because I originally thought the middle to me represented the soul or the inner being or the essence of who you are as a person. That is kind of comes from these other nodes that are situated in your life system. So that I was raising the question as to whether or not I was misinterpreting the me in the tetherball sort of illustration and the connection you have to universe. And then I was remembering what Fuller's epiphany in 1927 was, that when he questioned whether or not he should actually go out into Lake Michigan and take his life, he paused and ended up saying, well, wait a minute, I don't belong to me, I belong to the universe. And so I don't have a right to take myself out. That's universe's decision. Or for others, some would say, well, that's God's decision. And the other reason that came to my mind was because the reading of synergetics has been projected to take 2 years to get through it. And we would finish in November of 2027, which is almost to the date of the 100th anniversary of Fuller walking away from Lake Michigan. Yeah. So, so I'm still intrigued with that inner sort of concept of the me inside the tetrahedron, and whether or not that should be configured that way, or whether I'm okay in thinking of it, the me, as the inner being, the inner essence that we come to as we are affected by all these other nodes in our lives.
I still believe, I agree, I will agree with you. And then I will still believe that the me is the inside, is the metaphysical part.
Mm-hmm.
Because the me is a dual. There's nothing that stands on its own in the universe. It's always in twos at minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Any living thing is in two. So your four, whatever, that represent you, which are basically to me your senses to the world. So how your senses, center of your senses, the dual tetrahedron of you are the me inside, and the me is the imaginary part of you.
Yeah,
I've always
right.
I made that jump a long time ago, that everything has a visible part and a hidden part.
Mm-hmm.
And that hidden part is imaginary. In mathematics, they use an operator, J, too. It's like the cosine and the sine.
Mm-hmm.
The cosine is actually what we see, but is a reflection of the essence sign. That's why when you take appliances, for example, inverters, they say pure sine. They don't say pure cosine.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that? On all the inverters. Say, for example, if you use solar and you have continuous current and you want to convert it into alternative, they have inverters. And inverters, the advertisement of those equipment is always pure sine wave, not pure cosine wave. The co that is on the sign has a very deep meaning. The co means a reflection of a sign. So
yeah, and
batteries,
the co means, in my mind anyway, co means that minimum too. The
yes,
interplay between
it is part. It is part of you that we see. The co is the one that produces heat. Is the one that interacts at the border. So it's the outer you. You understand?
Yes.
Because we can only measure physical things. We cannot measure metaphysical.
Right.
We measure the physical. So that's why you need that measure of the physical plus the angle to determine what the whole thing is. If you give me the cosine and you give me the angle of the real thing that I measure, then I can give you the whole wave, just deduction, because those two make a whole.
Right.
Okay. So the cosine, the me that you present, Becky represent at the center, is a hidden part. Is what Steve sometimes present with his octahedron. You see when he had the Buddha or whatever that he represent, and that middle, the tetrahedral, is hidden. So each of us has a visible part and a hidden part. And mathematician described it a long time ago. It's only that in physics, and I come to the comment that I made on Wednesday, in that the basic form of equation is a quadratic equation of square. That is ax squared plus bx plus c. At equilibrium equals 0 or equal a constant, which is the same as equals 0 because you can pass the other constant, the other side, and subtract or add it to it is still a constant. The question is that as stability, as solution, there usually is not always, sometimes there's no solution for it, but sometimes there are two solutions, one positive, one negative. In physics, they usually say, ignore the negative, the one that is sign negative. See, the solution is plus square root of 3 and minus square root of 3. They say, no, don't account for minus square root of 3. Knowing fully that the measure of the magnitude of square root of 3 square is 3, whether it's positive or negative.
This reminds me of the whole conversation about where imaginary numbers came from. And the idea that at first the idea of a negative number didn't have much meaning, but then if you have say you have 14 squares, they would make a square pattern of 16, except you have now -2. And that's when they first considered the possibility that negative numbers had a positive effect. It was a geometric kind of thing. But what you said, Manu, is very similar to the whole conversation about negative numbers and how critical they are in the calculation of everything. And to just say, well, forget them, it's a hint of something bigger and more wonderful.
One other thing, there's more convincing, Steve.
Yeah.
Because our experience, if we say that we experienced things and felt things before we generalize, that is induction. In an inductive stuff, our experience is experience with positive numbers, right? We experience the experience of fire is the experience of fire that burns out, you feel it. It's a radiative experience. But what happened is that our feeling told us that there is more than what we measure, what we feel. We knew that, hey, a person that lives is born, is dead, right? But there is something else. So, and we couldn't, because we are inside, we couldn't see it. We couldn't sense it. So knowing the total exists, and knowing the experience that is less than the total, then we imagine that the difference must be there, it is hidden. And that's all linked to the idea of phases and dimensions. Because a phase of something is just the side of it that is lit. Let's just take the metaphor of light that is lit. If I take a sphere and I shine a light on it, I will just see, let's just say here. You see, there is a red sphere. Do you see the red?
No.
Right? But if I do this,
yeah,
you see red. If I do this in the other dimension, you see the two. So that's where the imaginary came from. We have to imagine it. That's why they say imaginary. They didn't say magical. They say imagine to complete the experience. And that's how the mathematician cope. They always knew that this was perpendicular to that. It was never in addition to it. It's always perpendicular. That is, if you project it to it, you have a point.
Cool.
Right? So if that's why they note it in mathematics. They say a complex number is A plus JB. And JB an operator that indicate that that dimension is perpendicular to the dimension of a space, to the dimensions of a space that you see. So in the case of a sphere, the only thing that is always perpendicular to this sphere is the radiative. So the sphere could be gravitational because it concentrates energy and then we see it. And what is inside is going to radiate across that out. We don't see it. The me deep, we don't see it. But it exists and expresses.
Okay.
Let's just say yes, I'm true.
Okay, good. I want to come back to Richard's. I want to welcome Joe. Joe, I notice you're on mute. Maybe it's inconvenient for you to say hi. We haven't actually started the meeting yet.
So yeah, I'm just driving, that's all.
Okay.
But that's I'm doing okay.
We're almost an hour in and we're about to start the meeting maybe. I want to come back to something Richard said. As I imagine the tetherball going around the pole, and it would come down low or it'd be high based on how the human being hit the ball, that at any time that the Pythagorean theory applies, the tether would represent the C, the hypotenuse, and at any other time, that ball is at 90 degrees to the pole, with the tether being the hypotenuse. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. There, I just saw the Pythagoras going ape crazy as this ball goes around on the tether ball, and everything's at 90 degrees, and everything is Pythagorean, which boggles the mind. To me, it just shows how I can take the simplest pattern, and it seems to fit in the situation. And if I lock myself into that one pattern, I'm going to miss some beautiful stuff.
And the beautiful thing in mathematics, Steve, note that by definition, the referential of any space of dimension n being which any integer, it can be 10, it can be 1,000,000. But the square root of the dimensions or of the angles, right? The square root of it, all of those, if you say this is domain, right? And this is A, B, C, D, N. And A, B, C, D being numbers. The square root of A squared plus B squared from C squared plus square is what? 1.
Okay, cool. And
it
that's
means
another thing.
It defines the unit sphere around the referential. the unit 1.
That's the other thing that I keep looking at, because E equals mc squared. Pythagoras has squares. I was just looking at what else was I looking at today that has squares everywhere. There are squared numbers. What is it with squares? And what is it with octaves? There's got to be something magic about squares.
Now,
So,
the square as we discover is fundamental.
well,
We
yeah,
love the triangle for its stability, but in terms of functionality of energy in the world, in terms of definition of energy, you need the triangle and the square. Is the combination, the different combination of the two
yeah.
that permits anything that we observe and
Well,
anything
and
that we do.
And that wasn't my point. My point was the square and the square root. I was talking about a squared plus b squared equals c squared, how E equals mc squared, and how in any formula that has much to do with anything in the universe, there's a square involved in it someplace. And so I'm just noticing that square, not in terms of a rectangle or, you know, a rhombus. I'm talking about the square, the
But
thing
notice that,
multiplied by itself.
notice that C is vectorial. C is not a scalar in your formula.
C is not what?
A scalar.
Well, if I'm playing
it's not just a
tetherball,
number.
if I'm
It's
playing
M.
tetherball, C is the rope.
No, wait. I'm saying mathematics.
I
When you
know,
say
but we
E,
were originally talking about tetherball.
no, I was going to something, Steve. I'm not challenging you. I just want to get something from what you say.
Yeah.
I'm saying, notice that E, energy, is a scalar. M is a scalar. But C is a vector. It's C square that make a scalar. Now, that C square, that C that you see, is the speed of light in all directions. It is like you had a point of light in a sphere at the center, and it's shining all around.
Sure.
So it is that, the M that you talk about, at the point of a sphere, is that distribution of A, B, C, D, N of that dimension, with square root of the sum of the square equal 1.
Well, talking about light radiating, and yet when I observe it, it looks like a photon. Even though it's radiating in every direction, I perceive it as a photon moving in a specific direction. And if one looks at the Andromeda paradox, one realizes that the faster one is moving, the longer it's taking the light to get from point A. So observer A, seeing light from point A, sees light at one moment, but if I'm moving fast, the faster I'm moving, the longer it's taking that light to get to me. So even though we're looking at the same thing, the guy who's moving fast is seeing light, is seeing more light, is seeing longer, it's taking longer to get there. So instead of the observer A seeing 13 light years, this guy's seeing 13.000158 light years of light. So he's seeing light from yesterday. And yet we're both looking at the same time. It's just I'm moving faster. It's called the Andromeda paradox, and it's one of those things that drive me crazy.
Can you look at this?
No,
This
I can't
triangle?
quite see it. I can't quite see it.
It's not. Let me put it nice.
Well, it's just the way you're holding it up. If you twisted it, hold it down a little bit so the light didn't glare off of it, we could see it. Okay, go the other, tilt it. Okay, tilt it more top down. Tilt it more like that. Okay, but now take your left hand and move it towards the camera and hold your right hand where it is. Left hand towards the, can you see that, Richard? That looks pretty good, right?
You all see it?
The red line is the hypotenuse, yeah.
Yeah, I see it now.
Yes. The hypotenuse is the trajectory, the real trajectory of light. Your trajectory is that you have an observer. So the light to see you, for you to see the light or the effect of light, it has to come and kink somewhere.
It has what somewhat?
It has to come and kink. It goes through the observer. You are an observer. So the light has to travel the direction that this thing that is the sum of the base and the height of a triangle, which is always more than the hypotenuse. Do you see that?
Yeah, but that's not quite what I was saying.
No, because you have an observer. So because you have an observer, your experience of light is longer. Is longer.
Yeah, here's the way that the Andromeda paradox is explained.
I
At
cannot
least
see
the way
you.
it was explained to
You're showing
me.
the other way, Steve. We can't see.
Hang
I don't
on.
know.
That's your drawing right there. You showed
Yes.
the hypotenuse in red. I'm showing in red. In the Andromeda,
Yes.
Andromeda paradox, you have observer A and observer B, and the source of light is C.
Yes.
And observer A is moving away from B at a fast speed. And so even though they're looking at the same thing, it takes longer for the light to get to observer B because they're moving more quickly. This is called the Andromeda paradox. So this person sees this light source 13 light years away. This one sees 13.0019 light years away. So this guy's looking at the star yesterday. This guy's looking at the star today, yet they're both looking at the same time, except B is moving faster than A. This is the Andromeda paradox.
Yeah, but it's a Doppler. I mean, to me, it's not a paradox.
To you, it's not a what?
A paradox.
Well, it's called the Andromeda paradox. I don't. You
It's
can call it
because
what you want to call it.
it's only because the other one is moving faster than towards the other faster than the first one.
Yeah,
So
it happens to be called the Andromeda paradox in science today. So to you, it's not a paradox. Cool.
Yeah,
Neat.
it's not.
Okay, good. Let's see, it's 9, it's almost 10 o'clock. We're almost halfway through the call. Shall we start the reading or shall we just call it an evening?
No, let's read. Let's progress.
There's
In
some good stuff coming.
in any endeavor, if you leave it to the numbers of those that are in to progress will falter. Because progress will always, oh yeah.
Well, we're all here but Anne. So, you
No,
know.
that's what I'm saying. So we read. And then
we
next
read.
time.
You want to say read?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So next time when Anne is there, we'll have a privilege. Even we start of being in a position of having read twice, which is over repetition is the mother of learning.
So Joe, how are you feeling? Shall we go ahead for an hour and do this thing?
Sure, I think so. Yeah, I mean,
All
I'm
right,
gonna have
great.
to log back in with the computer in a minute, but
Okay,
yeah.
good. Richard, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right, great. So Joe's going to be logging in. He's going to be, Joe, do you want to tell us how you're feeling and pass it on to somebody before you hang out and log back in?
Sure.
We already say how we feel.
No, we have not started the call. I told you that when you came in. Joe, how are you feeling?
By the text.
And what would you like to get today?
I'm feeling pretty good actually, and it was interesting. I got some things out of the conversation already. So you know that exchange that you were just talking about, how the observers actually can be looking at the same thing and have you know, kind of a little different experience would be one way of kind of putting it. That was interesting for me, and that's actually a really important point for you know, reasons of dialogue. But I'm looking to just continue also with you know, kind of a fuller explanation as I think we're finishing up this chapter. I think we're in part 9 of this of the fuller explanation, and yeah, no, I'm looking forward to just exploring it with everyone here. Manu, how are you feeling? What do you want to take away from today?
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, guys. I'll be back
I
on
feel
in a
happy.
minute.
Okay, I feel happy that we continue. That's what I was saying. So, Richard, how do you feel? What do you expect?
Well, I always feel very positive on the Saturdays that has the trim tab group in the morning and this group in the evening, because very often you can bounce off things that were talked about in the morning, in the evening, and especially now with us reading Amy's work, her work often comes up in the discussion of something like synergetics. But I really, really feel good about being able to read something through the lens of several of us, and I get a lot more out of it. And I happened to pick the tetherball illustration this morning as the section that I thought we might spend some time on, and we actually spent pretty much the whole 2 hours discussing around the 1 or 2, 3, 4 subsections to the tetherball section. Yeah, so I've looking forward to the continuation of our discussions. Back to you, Steve. How are you
All right,
feeling?
thank you.
You're
All right, I'm real
what you're
excited.
interested in.
I'm very excited about our conversation, and I like to keep it open, and I like to kind of keep on a track and be complementary to whatever conversation is going on. So that's what we've done so far tonight, I think. That's what I've attempted to do. I'm very excited about our reading because we're going to start it on on page 143, chapter 9, Isotropic Vector Matrix, and we're about to look at some very interesting things. So as everybody's contributed so far, I'm happy to see how everyone contributes to what we're about to experience. So here we go. There's our reading for tonight, and let me see if I can get it up here a little bit more. Okay, good. And I'll get this over here a little bit more. So this is chapter 9, Isotropic Vector Matrix. I'll go ahead and start reading on this page, and we'll change up in just a minute. The isotropic vector matrix has already been introduced. We just didn't know its name. If you can visualize the space-filling array of spheres in cubic packing described in the previous chapter, that's half the picture. Now imagine interconnecting the spheres of all the centers of all spheres and then eliminating the spheres. Two collinear radii meeting at the tangency point between adjacent spheres form one unit vector, the length of which is equal to the sphere's diameter. Look at picture 9.1. So, two collinear radii meeting at the tangency point between adjacent spheres form one unit vector, the length of which is equal to the sphere's diameter. Look at figure 1.9, which is now visible below. The resulting array of vectors is the isotropic vector matrix, a space-filling network of continuously alternating octahedra and tetrahedra. Reviewing the characteristic of cubic packing, we shall not be surprised to find that the newly formed vertices, the sphere's centers, are identically situated. Two types of cells, one type of vertex. And this is the topic here. Unit vector matrix within closed packed sphere cluster. Unit vectors interconnect centers of adjacent unit diameter. Any comments or questions on what we just read and what we're seeing? Okay. What I notice is that that's not a Metatron's cube. And I think the reason why, I'm not sure of the reason why it's not a Metatron's cube. Do you guys know what a Metatron's cube is?
No.
Well, let me bring up a Metatron's cube. Images. Well, here's a Metatron's cube right here. There's a lot of cool Metatron's cubes, by the way. Oh, crap. I happen to get on this thing. Okay, so here's a Metatron's cube. And the reason why it's a Metatron's cube is that here's the flower of life in here. And it extends a hexagon around a flower of life. And as you can see, there's a cube right here. And it goes down. I'm really sorry for the... I'm sorry for all the action that's going on over here. So if we come over here, here's Metatron's cube. But there's a cube in the middle of that thing, if you can see it. There's the cube right there, very visible. Anyway, and this is not a Metatron's cube. It's something different. So anyway, that's the first thing I notice. So I'm confused slightly. And evidently, these lines, I'm not sure what they're talking about here because this is the diameter. Didn't she say the diameter?
Yeah, and this is what hit me. You see, when you look at the very top two spheres, and you see one line to the edge of a sphere is half a diameter, and when you get over to the other sphere, it's the other half.
Yeah.
So together, it's a full diameter.
Yeah.
And then when you get rid of the circles, the spheres, then you have, I think what he just said, or she said, was you have two cells and one, what was the other one? Two cells and one line?
The resulting array of vectors is the isotropic network, a space-filling network of continuously alternating octahedra and tetrahedra. Two collinear radii meeting at the tangency point between adjacent spheres form one unit vector.
Right. And keep going. There's something to do with you.
The length of which is equal to a sphere's diameter.
Right.
Can I say something here?
Keep going in terms of you get to the two cells and the one line.
The resulting array of vectors is the isotropic vector matrix, a space-filling network of continuously alternating octahedra and tetrahedra. Reviewing the characteristics of cubic packing, we shall not be surprised to find out that all the newly formed vertices, the sphere's centers, are identically situated. Two types of cells, one type of vertex.
Ah, that's it. Yeah, two types of cells, one vertex. Because you've got the two cells, but there's the one vertex.
Is a cell a sphere, Richard?
Yeah, I think that's what he's referring to.
And so here's that's a line showing the diameter of the circle, but it connects to the centers of the two spheres.
Right.
Okay.
May
I say something?
Richard, are you complete?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I really sense the two cells, one vertex.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Manu, go ahead.
Okay. Let's just take the thing practically. We're talking of a whole, right? The whole is made of the vertices out. The outer vertices will give the form, and the content will give the feeling. When I say filling, F-I-L-L-I-N-G. The content, the form, and the content. Now, let's just take an approximation of a sphere of space that we know. Is the icosahedron.
Okay. I wish I could put that up for everybody, but if you want to see what he's showing, you need to pin,
Yeah.
go to the upper right hand and pin it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Manu.
That's an approximation of a sphere, which is the icosahedron. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you take that icosahedron, we know that the icosahedron will be composed of, the whole will be composed of two elements. We've already demonstrated that. That is the tetrahedron and the octahedron. Inside here, we feel this. We've already demonstrated that. That this hat here, if I put a liquid in there, I could trace lines that fill this stuff, which will reveal triangle, tetrahedra, and then octahedra inside to fill it. At the most compressed, when this becomes a unit tetrahedron, we saw that there are 4 tetrahedra and 1 octahedra in the middle. So, what does the octahedra, what is the characteristic of it? What is the characteristic of an octahedra? Apart from the fact that it has 12 edges. In the middle, what do you have? A square.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the middle, you have a square. That square is the square that you see in this picture. Remember that we are describing the same thing. We are describing the sphere. The IVM is supposed to fill the sphere. It's all space filling. It is energy at the most basic. And we so demonstrated that.
All right, go back to the name. What is IVM?
Isotropic Vector Matrix.
Right.
Meaning the same in all directions. It looks the same.
No, okay.
Isotropic means it looks the same. Whether you look up, down,
Yeah,
left,
yeah,
right,
so yeah.
it looks the same.
I don't want to go beyond what I just was getting at, but when you say the isotropic vector matrix, that diagram that we were shown is when you take the circles out, you get the vector matrix.
Yes, because the circle doesn't exist.
And
the circle
so
is
in
a
the
limit.
same way, if you put circles around the vertex points in the icosahedron, you would see the spherical sort of construction of the icosahedron.
Yeah, the icosahedron is an approximation is the most expanded stable form of universe. So it's an approximation of the sphere and the content of it. What is inside? What Bucky called the rhombic is the dwell of it. Is inside. You see the squares. A rhombic because it's square, and it's because of the octahedron inside. So you feel this. To describe the whole of this, you have this shell, which is what we see of this sphere. That's this shell, this half of it. And then you have what it contains. And we are in here. So to describe the whole, we only need 2 things to describe everything. We need an octahedron and a tetrahedron. Once you have those 2, everything that fills the universe, that is what we know, will be in rational numbers.
Yeah,
And the
what
only time that you have irrational number is when you try to expand this into the limit. Like when you are calculating the golden ratio, you're trying to now get into the finest of things.
Yeah, and no, you rush ahead. I'm back to the when you have the closest packing of spheres, and then when you remove the spheres in the way in which that paragraph describes, you then go from a spherical packing to a vector matrix.
Yes, this is
That's-
what it is. That is it. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, no, but I don't have to go that far. I'm just getting it in my head that when you go from a spherical packing and remove the circle and use the dynamometer and the vertex, you transform from the spherical packing to a vector matrix.
Yes, that's the definition of a matrix. That's
And
by the definition of a matrix.
yeah, I
When
know,
you say the matrix, that's the definition.
That's
You
the point
remove-
Richard's trying to make.
Yes.
that's all I'm saying is that in order to get it into one's mind in terms of what I think she's talking about, is that if you understand the spherical closest packing, and then you want to get to a matrix, then she's describing how that happens. And that's very important because we do go back and forth oftentimes with circles and spheres. And if we want to be able to interchange between them and a matrix is more like a 2x2 cell, or it most of the time the matrix that I've seen are in squares and not triangles, or not a combination of octahedrons and tetrahedrons.
But you can see again, if you look at this, does everybody see Steve's hypercube into this? Do you see it?
See what?
Or should I point it? The hypercube, do you see it on what is in front of you here now?
What am I supposed to see there, Manu?
A hypercube.
The hypercube, don't you see it? It's clear, it's there.
Well,
Just imagine.
what I pointed out, I didn't see the hypercube there. I still don't see the hypercube.
So let me show you the hypercube. Do you see the dash line on top?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, if you take that square that is closer to you, is bigger than the one of a solid line that is behind, where you have another triangle coming down. Do you see that? Okay, Joe, you seem to be looking. Look at the dash line, right?
I see the dash line. I'm looking.
Okay, imagine
and I
that
see
dash line going up, down to make it square. You can see the square that will be made by it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if you take that dash line and you put around, you painted it in a certain color. Steve can do it. He's very apt to do it. So you take the dash line and you cut it to make a square. Bam, 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 bam. Okay? And then you go behind it, look deeper, you need a solid line, because there is that solid triangle that comes at the middle of a dash line, the dash horizontal line, and it has another dimension at the back of it.
Oh,
You
yeah.
see that?
Yeah.
If you take that, you come down, and then you make another square. And then you link those two. That is the hyper square. That is the representation of hyper square. You've seen multiple dimensions.
Yeah.
That's what Steve has been talking about all this while. Do you see that, Joe?
I do.
Maybe you're more explained than me. But it is very, as the figure is in front of me, that's what I see. Steve, if you take, Steve, can you do something on this?
I'm doing what I can to get my computer to show up here.
Yeah, because I'm sure that if you see, you will do it, and then you see it. It's so clear because you've been talking about it all the time.
All right, so I have my computer set up. so that if it operates very slowly here.
Okay, takes first a snapshot of this one.
I got a snapshot of it already. So where is this the line you're talking about right here?
He's talking about the
No, take the
dash
dash line, the top, the uppermost dash line.
Yeah, that one right there.
Well, I
I'm
don't
not
see
seeing
where you're
anything.
pointing.
We're
I
not
don't
seeing
see where you're
anything.
pointing.
Well, do you see it yet?
No.
No, we don't see your cursor.
There we go.
Okay. Now, if you take that uppermost dash line and you
Right.
painted it red,
It's red. It's already
Huh?
red. So what do you want now?
No, it's not red.
See, I'm not seeing it.
It's
It's
moving really slow.
It's moving really, really slow, guys. So what I'm going to do is turn off my video. Boy, that's not responding.
Yeah, there's point.
Okay, I just turned off my video.
Okay.
Are you seeing it yet?
No.
Okay,
no.
let me, I'm just going to make a photocopy of this from my book, and then I'll trace it. And then I'll show you.
I can't believe it. I have a red line going across there, right there. A
Yeah, but
red
we can
dotted line.
see.
So let me see if it's just not showing up because it's not red here. Let's call this hypercube in the IBM. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to start sharing again and maybe that will work. Okay, do you see the red line now? Yes, it is there.
I'll be there in a second, please.
Do you
see it
see the
now.
red line? Okay, good. So where's the next red line go, Joe?
Okay, so you continue the red line to make a square. Just continue on that. Just take it and make a square. No, not on that level. At the level of a face, yes.
Okay, there was no dotted line there, so I just did that because you told me, not because
Right.
Yes. There's no that line.
not because Amy has double lines there, just because you told me.
It is. But you can see that one, and then go close the rectangle.
I am doing that now.
Excellent.
Okay, hopefully you see the red square that I've got there.
Yes.
Excellent, Joe. Now go behind it. You see the solid line at the which link the centers of the two uppermost spheres.
Yeah, in the middle, right?
Yes. Now you can do that in blue.
I'll do it in blue.
Wow. Okay, I didn't see that.
Okay. Now make also the square.
I would never pick that up.
Yeah, but see, it's not, I'm just putting lines in. I'm not following any of her dashes.
Say on that
No,
one
but you can see the cube, right?
Just do of the same length as the one on top.
The same length as the one on top, so I'm going to drop below.
Yes. And then just go there.
How far down do I take it?
No, at the length, the same length as the top line, as the top dash blue. It's a square in the background.
Yeah, it's not making a square for me, Manu.
Okay, but let's just pretend that we're making squares.
Well, I'm pretending.
Okay. So your two sides are too long, but that's fine. Okay.
Well, it isn't fine. I'm going to make them shorter.
Okay. I know that you are an artist, so I forgot.
Well, I wish I had better speed on my.
Okay, lower than that.
All right, so now I have a little blue cube, a little blue square.
Yes. Now take the yellow and connect the top of each square to the the red, the top right of a red to the
Yeah,
top.
I think yellow will be hard to see. So how about if I pick green?
Yes.
More colors. Custom. Wrong. Shape outline. That's.
Yes. Now put it solid so that because there are too many dashes there.
All right, I'll make it solid because there are too many dashes there. I don't know why.
Yeah, it didn't make it solid.
I'm trying to make it solid. I'm doing everything I can to make it solid.
Go to dash type.
I'm going to.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Maybe a fatter line.
There's shape
No, you
line.
get it.
Here we go. Whoops.
Yeah. No, you go to dashes, right?
Well, I'm trying to get rid of the dashes. Line style.
Right.
There's the line style there. What I'm going to do here is just get a new line because it doesn't want to change its shape. So there we go. Now I'm going to make this big and I'm going to make it green. Okay, so there's a green one there.
Okay, put on all the four corners.
Will do. However, okay.
And then put at the bottom too.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's the hypercube, see?
Yeah.
Say what?
The hypercube.
The hypercube.
It's not a hypercube. That's a
The
cube.
way it can rotate in and out.
A hypercube is at least 6 cubes. It has a cube
I will
inside
say
of a
no.
cube
I've
inside of a cube.
just show you one thing, Steve.
This is just a cube.
Yeah, but this is the IVM goes further and further. Remember that you have a large cube. This thing goes further and further. So you represented the first iteration here. Then there's follow. It goes like that, concentrated. You have a tunnel vision there. That's what it does. Remember that the IVM, we just take a plan, what she represented here. Remember that we just took this thing. But that thing is in all directions the same, yes. That thing, you can go further behind, smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Okay, there's your cube.
Yes.
It's not a hypercube.
Is what, Steve? Now
what?
take another one and take the blue one, that is that at the back, and make it the face of it and continue on that. What does it give you? Because the IVM is almost infinite. You're looking at it, it goes the same in all directions.
Well,
Take now the dotted blue, and then let
Yeah.
it represent now the red and continue, making it smaller and smaller. What do you have?
well, you're saying there's a cube inside of a cube because these spheres get smaller and smaller.
No, I'm saying the numbers, the perspective, because hypercube is just a perspective. The perspective of seeing this thing in that direction going this way is the hypercube. That's how you've taken other dimensions in contact. Because
Wow.
that is the first dimension that you see. Behind it, there's another dimension. Hypercube is putting dimension one at the back of the other to make.
Well, it's not at the back of the other. It's inside of the other. It's a cube inside of a cube inside of a cube.
But that's inside. That's not inside. Yes, it's inside.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm taking your word for it. I don't see it in this vector matrix diagram, but I'll take your word for it. If I go over here and I say
Joe, do
hypercube,
you see? Joe, do you see?
I do.
Okay.
One second.
Maybe Steve will think again, but it is there.
here's a hypercube.
They
That's a
go
hypercube.
in and out. It can. I know what you're saying, Manu.
Well, that's a hypercube right there. So
Right.
the only way that you get this from this is you have to imagine smaller and smaller spheres.
But
or
it is,
bigger and
Steve.
bigger spheres.
It is. You are in phase. You are in the phase. You see the largest most sphere, circle in front of you, and then you have a concatenation of circles behind.
This is
That
a
go
this is a
far and
hyper
far.
this is a hypercube right here.
I'm not seeing that. There's nothing that you shown there that we're seeing. It's not
Okay,
showing.
hang on. This should show it. Okay, you see this guy up here in the upper right-hand corner?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about.
That's
just
a
about.
hypercube. So
Yeah,
a hypercube is a cube inside of a cube inside of a cube.
correct.
But it is, Steve. If you take that stuff and then you fix it and then you rotate, it will be the same.
Yeah, but the only way that this is a hypercube is if there are smaller spheres inside of this.
The hypercube is because space is curved. That's all. So if I take this sphere, look here. You see this hat? If I
Yeah.
cut it here and I cut it here and I cut it here and I cut further, it's smaller circles. There's one big, concentrated. One inside the other. Fractals of this. I take this hat. I make the first pentagon here.
Is
I
that the
do this-
spiral that you're talking about?
No, it's not a spiral. I'm saying if I take, imagine, if I take this hat, this was a sphere. Let's just imagine that this is an hemisphere, right? This is an hemisphere.
Yeah.
I first cut here. I'm behind it here. I cut around here. I see a large circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I come behind here, I cut here, let's say at the height of this equilateral. I cut again here. I see a circle that is smaller than the circle that I saw here.
Well, that's what
That
I
is
said.
behind this one and smaller and smaller
That's
and
what I-
smaller.
That's what I said, Manu. I said the
Yes,
only
that-
way there could be a hypercube, and that's in that diagram from Amy, is if there are smaller circles inside of it.
But that's what we are seeing there. Why don't you see that?
I don't see smaller circles.
we are the
inside.
observer in front of it. The first circle is a circle around all the circles. That's what we see. Remember, we're
Right.
seeing on the plan.
Well,
And the
some of
sec-
us
the
don't
s-
have the topological brain that you have, and so I'm just going by what I see right in front of me. And
Okay, just contour the first thing. All the spheres. You contour them. You have one big circle. You can do that.
yeah, and what I was saying was that this is not a Metatron's cube. This looks more like, in fact, if you look on the next page of this little thing here, this is more like this kind of stuff. These are octahedra. We're going to read. Maybe we should just continue to read for
But
a few minutes.
it is the same thing, Steve. It is just projections. We're talking, when you take the hypercube, does not exist as the hypercube in reality. It's
Yeah.
a representation of dimensions.
Okay,
Right.
And
so
and the
let me
representation of the farther that I see, the smaller it is.
Okay, good. So let me continue to read what she says, and maybe she will say what you are saying. But you're going beyond what she is saying, and I'm doing what I can to understand what she is saying. So here's what she now says. It's not hard to see how Fuller's search for geometry of vectors led him to the isotropic vector matrix. Since vectors produce conceptual structural models of energy events, and since my hypothetical generalization of Avogadro's law requires that all conditions of energy be everywhere the same, what this condition look like as structured in what does this condition look like in structure as structured in vectoral geometry? His answer is ready. Obviously, all vectors must be the same length and all of them must interact. And this word sick is an editorial thing saying that's how he spelled it. At the same angles, and this is the reference in synergetics. This isotropic vector matrix, or IVM, takes the vector equilibrium a step further, consisting of identical lengths and angles, not for vectors surrounding just one point, but surrounding every point in an indefinite expanse. In Fuller's words, the IVM is a multidimensional matrix in which the vertices are everywhere the same and equidistant from one another. Reference in synergetics.
Yes.
It is not correct to conclude that the IVM consists of many vector equilibria packaged together, for the VE by itself cannot fill space. To understand why not, we look at isolated sections of the IVM. As difficult as it is to visualize the overall metrics, a single row of alternating tetrahedra and octahedra, or even a planar expanse, can be easily envisioned. And there's your octahedra with your tetrahedra interfacing between them.
Exact.
Which, by the way, I think you guys are going to see this. Nope. Let me do this. Okay. So there's the octahedra with the tetrahedra leaning up against it, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing the tetrahedron here, here, and here, and then space between the tetrahedra are octahedra. It looks like not an octahedron because it's on an angle, but it very much is an octahedron. Everybody see that?
Exactly. Go back to the fundamental. When we define the dimensions, the 12 or the degrees of freedom, you take a tetrahedron, you first section the sides, the edges by half to have 4 tetrahedra. It results in an implied octahedron.
Now there's your 4 tetrahedra.
Yes.
And then in between them is the octahedron.
And then take the implied octahedra, you cut it into with 3 great circles. You remember? 1, 2, 3. That's what makes 3 times 4 is 12. You take the octahedra now, you can cut it. You can see the first circle, the great circle. Do you see the rectangle that is like this on that figure? That's like my hand. Do you see it?
Well,
take the octahedra.
I see a rectangle in the octahedron for sure.
Yes. So three great circles. That's what Bucky called them. They cut them, and then those are the 3.
You always move steps ahead, Manu. Here is a tetrahedron, and here is the octahedron inside of it. If I open it up.
Yeah, this is another representation here that I have. You can see the green, the blue, and the green, the blue, and the red here. So on this side. Yeah, exactly. That's the same.
Yeah.
So you have the 3 great circles that you see that they're inclined.
And then here's the octahedron.
Yes.
Here's the octahedron that goes inside of here.
Yes.
I had to build this to actually visualize it.
So that is so fundamental to me, Steve. I think that every one of us should build it with paper.
That's how I
Because for as long,
understood it. That's how I've been
yes,
able to understand it, is just because I built it with paper. And
Yeah.
I even numbered the sides of the
yes,
octahedron so they would match the numbers inside
Mhm.
yes.
of the
That's the way.
tetrahedron. So that
That's
way
the
I'd
way you
know
understand.
how they matched up.
Exactly. So what she
Maybe
has here is a development of that, is unfolding of that in a linear way. Here, that's the same.
yeah.
Remember that we we multiply by dividing.
Right.
Okay. So in order to, in the finite system, in order to understand the finite system, we first divide it and then we have operation around them to understand more generalized part of it in terms of the characteristics and all these things. And that's what it is. So the IVM is just another representation. The hypercube is another representation. It is a way of showing that there's more than 3 dimensions.
Right. Right.
Because you can cut them and put them, what you call concatenation in mathematics. Concatenating means taking one, putting at the back the other. Yes, that is
Okay.
this A here is the concatenation.
Yeah. So I think everybody understands concatenation. So let me see if I can finish this page so then we can wrap it up. Figure 9.2, alternating tetrahedra and octahedra. Single row of alternating tetrahedron and octahedra. This is A. Then B is the planar expanse of alternating tetrahedra and octahedra.
Exactly.
So up here is one row. And then when we stack all these rows together and we dissect it, we end up with this figure.
Yeah.
Separate planar.
See it again there. You can see your hypercube now. You see the cube in the front,
Yeah.
and then you can see, yes.
Yeah. You can
Yeah.
definitely
On that
see.
one, you can see the cube quite clearly.
You
Very
can, and
clearly.
it's not a hypercube. You have to extend it out so that it overlaps. All these radii overlap on themselves before it becomes a hypercube.
But in my opinion, what you should teach everybody without going into all of these complexities is that every system can be reduced at the base to tetrahedra and octahedra. Finish.
Right. And then you
Separate
can,
planar layers are then stacked together in such a way that every octahedron is adjacent to a tetrahedron and vice versa. And you guys all see that,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Everybody can see the tetrahedron here and the octahedron
oh yeah.
stacks up
Yes.
beside it.
Yes.
Okay. And then figure 9.3 shows 3 layers of the resulting matrix. I'm looking for Metatron's cube, and I don't really see it like I normally see it, so I'll continue to examine it. Isotropic Vector Matrix and Octet Truss. Let's see, do we want to try and read this? We'll finish this off, and this will be it. Every node in the IVM as the origin of 12 unit vectors radiating outwardly. Every node in the IVM as the origin of 12 unit vectors radiating outwardly is the center of a local vector equilibrium. The ends of these unit vectors define the 12 vertices of the VE. However, this does not mean that the adjacent cube octahedra pack together to produce a space-filling expanse. A symmetrical array can be created by bringing the square faces of adjacent vector equilibria together, but they are necessarily separated by octahedral cavities framed by the triangular faces of 8 converging VEs. So you see the squares because they're separated. The unavoidable octahedra between adjacent VEs provide yet another manifestation of the specificity of shape of space. This array can be readily understood by observing in figure 9.4, which is on the next page, that a packing of a vector equilibria is equivalent to a framework of cubes in which the corners have been chopped off, thus automatically carving out an octahedral cavity at every junction of 8 boxes. The above observations provide information about the shapes and angles of the IVM, the most symmetrical arrangement of points in space, and therefore about the shapes of space itself. And here is the things she talks about. Whoops. That's not quite the thing she's talking about. That's 9.4. I want to get to 9.3. Somehow I think I clicked too much and went 2 pages ahead. Sorry for the of space itself. Okay, hang on. It's at the top of this page is where we're looking. Okay, so here's your isotropic vector matrix and Octahedral. Or did I read past that, you guys? I did. So there's the isotropic vector matrix and Octahedral. And then here, that's page 145. And then here is her 9.4 octahedral cavities between adjacent VEs. And there's a cube octahedron. I can see that very clearly.
Okay.
Okay, my mind is blown. And,
Okay. Can I say something?
sure you can.
I think Amy also gets very complicated. How are you?
I think he sees you.
There's Lynn. Lynn is behind.
She can't hear unless she puts on those headphones over there.
Okay. All right. Steve, look at
Yeah.
this.
What?
You see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. The imply is not that strong. I push it, it twists. It twists. Okay. Now, take your octahedron. Take it, Steve. You have a better thing than me.
So
And
here
put
comes
it in. Yeah, put it in. Put it in. Put it in.
It
Put
was
it in.
already in.
Yes. Try to push it. Is it stronger?
What?
Okay.
Is it
You have it
stronger?
empty. You have it empty. This was empty. Implied.
Okay, that one's implied.
Yes, it's very flimsy. It
And
is. If you apply it a little bit, it twists.
I see. If it's gone, then it's very twisty. If it's in there, then
Yes. If you put your octahedron that you have the implied that you are not built.
Yeah.
Imagine it, put it inside.
It is inside.
And then try to push it. It's a little bit stronger.
It is stronger.
That's why it's called trusses, octet trusses.
Okay.
All right. So this is the whole stuff. The whole stuff is that universe at the most compressed form is reducible to 4 octahedra, no, to 1 octahedra, octahedron and 4 tetrahedra that you can put together to make a tetrahedron in 2 that is folded to the maximum. It can be expanded to the maximum by expanding inside those octahedra and putting them together arranged to fill the space. And the space is only filled with what is fluid, right? When I mean fluid is more generalized fluid, that is air. Those are solid that move like pebbles. And then those are fluid. They will put themselves together in an agency, or what, how do you call it? In an arrangement of tetra and octa inside here.
Cool.
Some of which are not going to be equilateral. You're going to have isosceles. You're going to have right angle inside to fill, because it's twisted to fill this space. Right? That's why Becky says to describe universe as the sum total of our knowledge that is measurable and finite, you only need two derivations. The first one was to have the four octahedra, the four tetrahedra, that is dividing the edges by 2. And the second one was by dividing the octahedron with 3 planes. After that, you have things of shape that are no more triangles, or that are very, very complicated. That's when you start approaching, now describing the whole sphere, approaching like in the golden ratio. You have a series that come across an hyper, you have a sphere like this. The sphere, this is an hyperbolic surface, right? From outside, the surface of a sphere. So I'm coming and I'm trying to describe that closer and closer, or I'm coming from inside. It's the same, it's just the converse of the same problem. I'm trying to, so I have to now imagine things that tend to the tangency here without ever touching it. So the ratio converge. It's like the pi of the sphere. The pi is a series of numbers that converge without ever touching. That is when you start going into extending further than the sum total of our current, further than our universe. Our universe is finite. Now we're trying now to link it with the metaphysical. Then we start having irrational numbers, because the universe is supposed to be rational, because it's known. Something that is known, knowing scientifically means that you can repeat it. You can repeat it means that you know the cause and the effect.
Cool. So Manu, why don't you share your takeaways? How are you feeling? And
I've shared, yes, what I feel,
do
I
your
feel very
takeaway and then
excited.
pass it on, and then pass it on.
Yes. What I feel very excited about this. I feel that the essential of a geometry of space, of a thought, can be taught to non-mathematical people who have nothing to do with mathematics. If you try to explain the thing in principles and take artifacts to demonstrate those principles. And I think that will help people a long way. And that's, to me, what is the major takeaway from this, is that we should, in our meetings here, try to devise ways, artifacts, to convey message that mathematically expressed can be very complicated in a more simple way. Obviously, that will have to breach and to massacre the purists, the mind of a purist in mathematics, in a way, because we have to make jumps in order to do that. And I'm grateful that we all here, that we exchange, and that we are intellectual gentlemen, and that we don't feel personal about things, about point of view. We are open to listen. Otherwise, we are beautiful people. Joe, how do you feel? What do you take away? And Amy, obviously.
Yeah.
All right.
Wave into her as well.
Yeah. No, I mean Lynn. I said
Lee.
Yes.
Lee.
Lee, yes. Welcome. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
Amy
How do you
wrote the
feel?
book.
How do you feel? What do you take away?
Yeah, no, I feel pretty good after that final share. So I mean, I think what kind of what you were going through, this idea with the hypercube is it is important, because the idea of understanding what it can be reduced to in its minimum minimum state, we can understand systems. More importantly, we can understand the limits and the boundaries within the systems. So I think that that's, that's kind of key, because once you understand the most minimum basic forms within a system, that you start to understand the complexity, that how complexity emerges from there. And that's a really important point. And I was talking about that a lot earlier today. During another meetup, is that how there are multiple dimensions and levels of complexity when even you're looking at things. And I was thinking about this in terms of the discussion was really geared towards international trade. So when you think about it in terms of that, there's a set of boundaries, and obviously things becomes much more complex to that, but you have to understand what is the basic minimum system that you're actually dealing with. And the other part of that is that you start to be able to see patterns within those systems. And I think that that's actually, relates directly to some of the discussions that I've actually been having with even some colleagues at work. So for me, this, obviously I appreciated what Manu just said, and our ability to kind of listen to one another and learn from one another. Yeah, I mean, so that's really my takeaway is I would not have seen that hypercube as clearly if we had not gone through that process. So anyway, that's my takeaway. Richard, how you feeling? What are you taking away from today?
Oh, well, I'm feeling energized, and I'm not sure if the point that Manu was making a few minutes ago is what is in my head now, because Fuller talked about the importance of experiential evidence. And I treat that as something different from experimental evidence. And I think that's what Manu was just saying, that if we have artifacts that we can build or use to illustrate, we're helping people see the experiential evidence, not necessarily the experimental evidence. And I think science, by and large, has got caught up with the idea of experimental evidence or sensorial evidence. And so the two need to mix. So I'm taking that away. I'm certainly taking away a deeper understanding of how to go from a spherical packing into a vector matrix. I'm also taking away something that I think is missing in so many people's minds and discussions, and that's the combination of vectors and vertices, or nodes and relationships, or compressions and tensions. And that we try and turn the connectors into nodes or things, rather than realizing the dynamics of the two working together, much the same way as looking at an octahedron and tetrahedron working together. So all of these are takeaways. The other one is the continuation of what feels like a interchange between the notion of complexity and simplicity, or not so much simplicity, but the the notion of complexity and complicatedness. And we move back and forth with those two words without fully understanding that they're not the same, they're not synonymous. And the more that we can see the complexity, almost like the idea of a cube inside a cube inside a cube and that sort of thing, or as Manu was describing the changing circles in the icosahedron sort of model that he was showing, then that's helping us understand complexity. And it also removes the idea of things are simple or complicated. And one last thing, which I didn't raise earlier, but I did send it to Steve earlier today, is that I saw what I thought was a beautiful modeling of the n times n minus 1 equation to show how many connections there are between any number of points. And it showed a visual of how you build out a structure that goes from 2 to 3 to 4 and all the way up to 20. And it unfolded the picture that you would get of every one of the points being interconnected with another or with the other. And it ends up with a beautiful sort of complex matrix, I guess you might call it. So I don't know if you got that, Steve, but I found it to be something that might be of interest to all of us because it really does help us understand, or help me understand, that formula of n times n minus 1 over 2. So those are some of the things I'm taking away from this evening. Steve, how are you feeling? What are you taking away?
Okay, I'd love to capture the insight on the n squared minus n over 2. And I'm still struggling with my own takeaways from today. So I'd love to hear about that. And Manu's idea that we find ways to make this simple is a great idea. I think that having been through sessions where I built these things with Manu and took hours, maybe took 2 sessions to do this with a knife and scissors and tape, and then worked on my own. These are simple ways to understand, and this has made a major difference for me. But at the same time, what we're doing is we're reading Amy Edmondson, who is, I think, doing what she can to, since she's a Harvard professor, she's doing what she can to make this available to Harvard students as well as lay people. So she's got a point in mind and she's getting there, and we're going to learn more about it as we go. I too agree with Richard on the idea of spheres to vectors. Spheres don't exist. They basically are a metaphor of how energy manifests itself as a torus. So I would like to show some stuff here. Again, coming back to the Oort cloud by a Danish astronomer who suggested that our solar system is in a torus. And this is the way the energy manifests. And somewhere in here is the center of gravity, or the center point, focal point for all this energy. And so somehow the spheres are the way physical reality manifests, energy manifests in its physical reality, but this vector matrix is the way that we see the universe. So this is from our week ago with Lefert, with his cosmometry book. This is also the vector matrix, the IVM, isotropic vector matrix, in 3D. It's a 3D flower of life where each one of these things that we saw tonight with Amy are manifesting on top of themselves over and over again, which is what Manu tried to do to get me to see the hypercube in there. And so this is kind of a frame for a 3D flower of life. And and what she says right here in this little guy, every node in the IVM as the origin of 12 unit vectors radiating outwardly is the center of a local vector equilibrium. The ends of these unit vectors define the 12 vertices of the vector equilibrium. So I'm seeing this guy coordinated with this guy, coordinated with Manu's effort to get me see the hypercube, because I can see an hypercube in this. I could not see a hypercube in this. I really enjoyed building this guy. This was a lot of fun. But again, I'd have to see every vector, every point in these, every center point in each of these spheres be the center of its own IVM, and then have that stacked up on top of itself infinitely like this, and then I can get to this. Okay, good. Thank you for your patience as I ramble around. I see there's a comment in the thing over here, Manu. It makes sense. As we observe with lag, only action and action between systems happens most of the time at the boundary. The sun might be the zero phase of a double torus. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the whole universe, the whole solar system is a zero phase of a double torus. So that's cool. All right. So there's my kind of conglomeration and put together. And now to change the whole thing, Lee, Anne wasn't here tonight because she was having Mother's Day celebrations with her family. And that's what you are doing. So you can bring us back to reality and Mother's Day. How are you feeling? And what were your takeaways today from your family outing?
Well, up above Steve's head, you can see my Mother's Day, Happy Mother's Day balloon, which I brought.
I did see it.
And he's going to eat a beautiful meal that he's going to love if you're not full.
I'm full.
Darn.
Yeah.
And boy, I missed something. I really wanted not to get my hair cut, which I did.
Oh, you did get your hair cut?
Can't you tell?
Yeah, now I can.
Steve, can't you tell? Steve and I can tell. Sweet.
And I can put it back. I can put it in a ponytail. And I had a happy day with my granddaughters.
Cool.
Good for you.
Are you complete?
I am complete.
Okay, good.
Can't wait to catch up.
Yes,
Steve.
Manu.
I've just represented your Andromedas paradox, right?
Oh yeah, I looked that up.
Yeah, but to me the paradox is that B is greater than VA, and B sees yesterday.
I don't see the chart. And the paradox is what?
You see, VB is greater than VA, right? B is moving faster than A.
Yeah, but that's not the way I see it. I see it a little bit differently, but okay.
No, you say the observer B is moving faster than the observer A, and they have the same source of light.
Yes.
And to me, the paradox is that it's moving faster. It should be seen earlier. It's seen yesterday, whereas A is seen now.
Yeah,
That's what that's the paradox I see.
Didn't you say that BC was yesterday?
No, I say VB. The observer B is moving faster than observer A.
Yeah.
Yet, observer B sees yesterday,
Yeah.
and observer A sees
Yeah,
today.
that's what you just
Relatively.
said. You said
Yes.
BC sees yesterday.
Yeah, yes. So that
Well,
to be the paradox. The paradox
we-
is you moving faster
We've
and
known
seeing later.
that BC means yesterday for a long, long time.
No, I'm poking Steve. What he said. All right.
And AD means after today.
Is what, Richard?
Richard is also pulling
means
your leg.
BC means yesterday.
Yeah.
And AD, I'm trying to figure out what AD means, but
It say British Columbia means yesterday,
yeah.
and VA and Victoria, Australia means today.
guys, I had a vision about this at my Vipassana 10-day sit of silence, and you guys are making fun of it. So I'm not going to take it personally. I'll wait until next week. Yeah, I love you guys.
All right,
Thank you so much.
guys.
Bye,
Beautiful, beautiful.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.